pledge to the flag again before beginning. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioner districts of the county. The purpose of this board is to review applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by the board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. A final decision is then made. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in the granting of variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. We have 3 items on the agenda for tonight. And the first item on the agenda is Hannah Hollenkamp. If that applicant would come forward, and whoever's with you might come too, and state your name for the record.
Hannah Hollenkamp.
Thank you. This is 2133 Green Prairie Lane, Little Falls. Application for a variance to add on to a non-conforming structure. Green Prairie Township on Green Prairie Fish Lake. Staff report, please.
You bet, Mr. Chair. Okay, this is a variance to expand a non-conforming structure, again located in Section 18 of Green Prairie Township. The ordinance references for this request is Section 301, 301.6, 706.1, 706.1A, and 706.3. Then here is a plat map of Green Prairie Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And here's an aerial photograph of the 2 parcels outlined in yellow and blue. And then here's some oblique imagery. And then here is a photo from the shoreline. And then here are some photos taken at the site visit on the 27th of June. Again, the property is in Section 18 of Green Prairie Township. It is on Green Prairie Fish Lake, which is a general development lake. The property is made up of 2 parcels, and together they are a conforming single lot, which means they're at least 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 142 feet wide and 50,350 square feet. According to the assessor's records, the 1,789 square foot dwelling was built in 1976. The closest point of the dwelling to the lake is 40 feet. The entire home is within the setback to the lake. And then here's an aerial photograph with the measurements from the closest point of the home and then to the back of the home. A building envelope is available on the property, and that was indicated in the site drawing. And the applicant has owned the property since 2018. And then here is the site drawing again. The red square is the building envelope. The applicant is requesting a variance for the following projects. The first is to replace the foundation of the existing home with 6 courses of block to create a crawl space for utilities. The overall height increase of 4 feet, as some of that would be below grade when measured from natural grade. Construct a 720 square foot addition onto the home, and that would be 75 feet from the lake. And then the third would be to construct an attached 813 square foot garage, 75 feet from the lake. The elevation of the lot is in line with the ordinary high water mark of the lake. The ordinance and state shoreline rule requires the lowest floor of a dwelling, including crawl space, to be at least 3 feet above the ordinary high water mark. This will not be achieved with this project. So here's with the aerial photograph with the elevation contours and then the contour line for the ordinary high water. Approximately 750 cubic yards of fill is proposed to insulate the foundation and promote drainage away from the lake. Some of this will occur within the shore impact zone, but a variance is not needed. And then you'll notice in your packet that there was a submitted stormwater plan for more information on how that water will move. If measured from the final elevation with fill, the overall height of the structure after elevation on block would be 19 feet 2 inches. The impervious surface calculation with the proposed additions is 13.8%. 25% impervious surface is allowed. At the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the applicant: that the proposed additions would be in line with the existing home within the shore impact zone. And at the dirt meeting, the applicant was advised to move additions back to utilize the building envelope, which is reflective in the plan that you see tonight. 2 bedrooms would be added with the addition. Septic capacity, there was a question on septic capacity for additional bedrooms. The elevation of the lowest floor must be at least 3 feet above the ordinary high water mark. It's a flat property, and there was a question whether that could be achieved. And that we needed to know the resulting overall height of the structure after the foundation work. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2. Shoreline development, goal D1. And then the water plan goals and objectives, surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 50 notices were sent. 1 letter was received prior to the public hearing. And I believe that was included in your packet, Mr. Chair? Was that comment letter provided in your packet?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so then I will read it.
Somebody saw it? I didn't.
I will read it. We had gotten it pretty early, so. Okay, so this is from Robert Masog. Yes, it was included in your packet, Mr. Chair. So if you'd like me to read it, I can. Otherwise, it was included in your packet. And that was the only comment I received.
I still didn't follow on that comment.
I'll read it.
Okay.
As a permanent resident of Green Prairie Fish Lake, I only see benefits to everyone if this house is raised. The next 3 homes to the south of this property are all more than 1 story. Even after this house is raised, it will still be lower than most homes located next to it. Raising it would not block anyone's view and will only improve the property. Also, it is the right thing to do as it will greatly improve the quality of life for the family that lives in it. And that's from Robert Masog.
Okay, thank you for reading that. Okay, does the applicant have anything to add at this time?
I suppose lots, huh? So you all noticed that the surface water flooding had happened with the last 2 rainstorms through Randall and et cetera. It was noted that the drainage ditch at the end of Green Prairie Lane is not flowing, so it's even backing up more into that area. I am putting a call into Public Works tomorrow to see if they can come open that drainage ditch up, because that's been a big impact issue to the local street. Another thing noted, it was noted that this wouldn't meet the 36 inch lowest floor, which is 3 feet above. If we were to actually do it per the federal and state guidelines, we would actually have to do 8 courses a block, which would bring us up 80 inches to allow for the 36 lowest floor support, and then the 44-inch crawl space, and then I'd bring it up as the elevation higher. There was questions working with Amy during the process about how the stormwater would drain away. As you could see yesterday, it does not drain back to the lake, it drains away. And that's not a concern. The main majority of the front portion of the property as well, working with Bob Masog, the highest level of the berm, I want to say it was like 1.5 feet all the way down to the drainage ditch. So it does naturally drain to the county ditch out to the larger ditch that is about a half mile down the road. And in the front yard, we don't typically use that, so I was envisioning using more plantings that would help support, as you can see in the picture, that would help support kind of the use of the lake, adding more flowers and being able to draw out some of that water and not use as much dirt in the front, to not grade it, to be able to grade it back around to the corner properties where water naturally flows. That's about it. Other than that, if you have any questions for me on the process of lifting the house and redoing the foundation, the current foundation is 1 footing, which we want to maintain, and then add the courses of block. The footings are still good, it's just needing additional block. They are going to hydraulically lift the house, that's the plan, and replace the foundation, put in radon pipes and some sump pumps to effectively manage the property as it should to be a home. The current dwelling is in actually good condition for being wet, as you can currently see. And I just want to make it a little bit better, more of a home.
Okay, thank you. Amy, before we go any farther, could you explain a few things? It stated in the staff report was approximately 750 cubic yards of fill is proposed. Some of this will occur within the shower impact zone, but a variance is not required or needed. Can you explain what things are being proposed here that are do not require a variance?
The grade and fill does not need a variance. It's a permittable activity, but we would be working with how the water's moving and stormwater movement, so it's not impacting the lake. The remainder of the projects, the lifting of the home and the additions onto the home, all require variances. So the grade and fill, the final grade and fill around the home is not subject to a variance, but the rest of it is.
Okay, so it's the grade and fill after the lift that doesn't.
That's correct, because all of it's not associated just with that work. It's regrading the property for adequate ingress and egress out of the house and all of that. So there's more grading and filling that is required on this project, other than just your typical, if you were backfilling a foundation.
Okay. We've got listed on here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ordinances that
Correct.
variance. Could you explain what those are?
Yep, I can go back. Let me go back to that slide, Mr. Chair, or those slides. The first one, 301, because this is a non-conforming structure already, 301 applies. 301.6 prohibits expansion of a non-conforming structure, so a variance is needed from that. 706.1 is the setback that the structure would need to meet to be conforming, just 75 feet.
Okay.
Because the home is 40 feet from the lake, it is within the shore impact zone, and the ordinance establishes that on a general development lake, the shore impact zone is the first 50 feet. And then, excuse me, section 706.3 talks about how we handle nonconformities within shoreland.
Okay, is there one more, 706.4?
Nope.
Oh, okay. That's listed here, but, all right.
Oh. I don't know offhand which one that is, I'm sorry.
Sharon knows everything. No? All right, thank you. So that's a lot of things that don't meet setbacks, ordinance, that we have to consider tonight. Just for the record, we viewed the property on the 27th, that was yesterday. Clint, myself, Dave, and Amy were there, and Marv was there. And Brent.
I stopped by later in the evening.
Okay. So we all viewed the property. Okay. All right, so questions for the applicant? Questions for staff? Who would like to start?
Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
Brent?
I guess I've got, and I'm not sure who can answer this, maybe Amy can, maybe the applicant can, but I'm wondering, I've heard that, and I heard last night from you that you were planning on raising it, leave the one course a block there, add 5 courses a block, but that still won't get the 36 inches. You had said that 8 courses a block would be needed to do that. Why is it that you're not seeking to do the 8 courses to meet that?
Because when I was working with Amy, she had said that the height requirements, I need to stay within the height requirements of the property. So that's why I went back to 6 courses.
Okay, and so the 8 courses would,
Mr. Chair, it would have triggered a variance request for height. And so that was told to the applicant, and it was a decision then that she needed to make as far as whether or not it was going to be an additional variance ask, because it would have added another variance request to the list.
I see. So I just wanted to clarify that because
Yeah.
it didn't
So
make
you-
sense to me.
Yeah, so applicants have the right to ask to exceed that allowable height, but her goal was to stay within the allowable height.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Marv, you're ready.
Oh, no, I can,
So is this your primary residence? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, if this would go through and you're gonna add this and put that garage and addition on, were you gonna keep the garage that's there? Is that gonna stay there? Just
Right-
asking.
Right now, yes, but future, I don't know.
Okay.
It's low. It's all low.
Okay. And then there was a thing, did we ever check or ever determine that by adding extra bedrooms, if the septic could handle that?
It wouldn't be adding extra bedrooms necessarily. It would be recreating the space. So the current
Okay.
bedroom in the house would go away. It would actually be the front entry of the property.
Okay, so we're not really adding any more,
No.
okay, just
Just-
re-rate, okay.
Yeah, recreating the space, recreating the kitchen, making it a little bit more family flowable.
Okay, then, somewhere in here, I don't know, we don't have to decide on it, but I still wanna ask the question. On that grading, said you're gonna grade it and use it for, insulation for the foundation. So what was the determination of that, or how about if you just went so many feet out and then put fill and then put something to hold it and then steps down to it?
The one recommendation was to do a retaining wall around the property, but Amy told me that was not allowable. So it was more or less to just kind of
Yeah,
do limited grading. I mean, you can do a lot with covering up the existing foundation. They're going to put 2-inch foam on it as well, so to kind of protect the integrity of the work that would be done.
okay. Did we check, we have 13.8% impervious surface, what would the new calculation be? Anybody figure that out?
That was including those
That
additions.
was, oh, okay. I have no more questions at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Clarifying this picture, the mound on the bottom of the boundary there, that is the sewer system, I assume?
Can I stand up and show you?
Yes.
Yes, that'd be helpful.
So the septic tanks are right here, the lift station is here, and it runs back to the mound system that was replaced last year, which is a level 3 mound system, so it is a prevent any sewer seepage, et cetera. You guys all know this. So essentially, the tanks sit here and it runs out here.
Okay, thank you. Amy, if we could go back to the picture with the building envelope in it. Yeah, it's got a red outline, but pretty hard for everybody to see the red outline, but it's the kind of the trapezoid shape that basically is starts at the back of the existing house, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the house, presently 40 feet from the lake, has to be lifted and raised 3 feet. I mean, we had a very good visual yesterday of the ordinary high water mark. And your property is, I mean, 1 inch of water or more on all of your property. You have to lift the house already. Why not move it back so it's a conforming structure? Have you thought of that as?
I don't know. I honestly don't even know what that would look like on the property.
Yeah.
It would be probably touching close to the neighbor's property as well. unless
Well, you have a
shift
building
it.
envelope there, that trapezoid. Anything you fit in there wouldn't require a variance.
Sure, so are you requesting, recommending that I would move it back to where the septic?
I'm not recommending
can-
anything, I'm just asking.
I don't know. It's just the proximity of how everything is currently laid out on the property isn't the easiest to maneuver.
Yeah, we often, or more than once, have come across people that have raised their houses and moved them, and then moved them right back to where they were, instead of using the building envelope. In my mind, that just never made sense. It's always good to have a conforming structure, then you don't find yourself in front of this board whenever you have a request for change. That's going to be it's going to be tough for me to grant any variance within the setback to the lake when you have a fairly large building envelope and where you have such a high water mark. I mean, that floods your property. I mean, if we go back to the picture from yesterday of the water standing right at your house, and if we could look at the well casing sticking out of the ground about 3 feet, that's about how high you have to lift the house to the top of that well casing. And if that were done another 35 feet back, I'm thinking it meets much more of the criteria of the ordinance, the intent of the ordinance. That's my opinion. And that's how I will be answering the criteria questions. So I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that or if we're ready for public input.
Mr. Chair, I had one more question. There was some discussion and brought up about if this is granted, that there would be some work being done in the shore impact zone and being some tapering. Do you have a specific plan, planting vegetation or doing anything in particular in that shore impact zone to prevent any erosion, anything going to the lake, as now we can see it's coming away, but if you bring it up, it's going to be tapering away towards the lake?
That's where I submitted the storm watershed management plan in there. In there, it specifies we would put a silt fence up to prevent during the project, any fill, anything that would potentially be a mitigation risk of that going into the lake. And then after the fact, it would be more of like a utilization of planting wildflowers and kind of letting it go back to its natural state to kind of support that watershed.
Thank you.
Question, who prepared this?
I did.
You did, okay. Have you had any input from Soil and Water or Land Services on that?
I worked with Bob Masag to run the elevations to the property all the way down to the drainage ditch to see where the elevations go. No, I have not recently worked with Soil and Water.
Okay. Yeah, just curious. Thank you. Okay, any other board input before going to the public?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
this is probably a follow-up to my earlier question, but based upon what you had commented about raising and moving back to the height, as a non-conforming, it would require a second or additional variance. But if this were moved back into that building envelope, would the height not then be 25 feet?
It's always 25 feet is the max. So if it were moved, if the home were moved back into the building envelope, but the overall height was going to exceed the 25 feet, a variance would be needed for that.
With the 5 Corsa block, I'm trying to keep my notes here straight, but I thought it was 19 feet something. Do we know what it would be if it were 8 courses or?
It depends on how much grading is done. So the thing, let me go back, because we take our measurement from natural grade. And so I had given you 2 measurements, because they're gonna essentially be recreating the grade on this. So you're factoring in the 3 feet of grade, so when you're taking that measurement from the newly established grade, then that's 19.2 with the 6, I think it was 6 courses of block is what she was proposing, and I believe that's what's in there in your application. So an additional 2 courses of block, how tall are those? About 8 feet or 8 inches?
They're
So
10-inch block.
an additional 16 inches or so would be added to that.
Roughly 2 feet.
Yeah, about 2 feet.
But exceeding the ordinance allowance on height is not part of the request tonight.
No, it's expansion of a non-conforming structure, which would be an increase in height, and so we address that regardless if they're going up to that 25 foot. If she was exceeding the 25 feet, it would be yet another ordinance or variance ask, because we'd be looking to exceed that allowable height.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any others? Okay, if not, we'll open it up for public input. Is there any public input at this time? If you have something to say for or against, go up to the microphone, state your name for the record.
Yeah. My name is Bob Skipper.
One more time.
Bob Skipper,
Thank you.
and I live 2 houses away from Hannah on the lake. We've been there, I've been there since 2004, and the flooding that you witnessed this week has definitely got worse over the years, especially in the last couple of years. It just seems a pity that she's got a lovely house there, and a great property, for what she wants with her children and that.
Could you move the mic real close to your mouth, please?
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
It just floods. I wouldn't consider it a problem if she had it the way she's planning to do it. It would improve the look of the house. It would certainly improve the backyard looking all flooded by anybody that comes through. As far as I know, all of our neighbours have got no objection to it whatsoever. My wife and I lived there, as I say, all but a couple of 100 feet away from Hannah's. And our backyard, we're lucky our house is a little bit higher at the front near the lake, but half of our backyard now is totally underwater. My garage is 2 inches to 3 inches deep in water, and that hasn't happened since we've been there. So certainly there seems to be a problem somewhere with the water draining away from all of our properties. I could only see Hannah's, she showed us a plan, she told us what she wants to do. I know Bob Masog, he did talk to me and said it would only improve the place. She's got children, it would make it a lot better for them to live there. And it would make, maintenance of the house, anything that was needed, much more easily done in the future, if there was anything that was needed to be done. At the moment, you can't get under the house. you know, you need a snorkel kit or a a diving kit to go under there in this weather. I've got pictures that actually show it worse than what you've got there, and that was just taken in the last couple of days. You know, I think you saw it when it was maybe an inch or two underwater. My photos can show you where it's that deep. And it's, you know, all flowing into the house. Any grading that Hannah would do there would take the water away from the lake, you know, and running towards the back of the house to where it'd be naturally draining into the wetlands. I don't see anything that would affect that detrimentally to the lake. And I think it would only make it, you know, more cosmetically looking a lot better for anybody that was on the lake seeing it or passing the back of the houses. You know, I could only see it as an improvement to the area. And as I say, I've talked to the next door neighbour to Hannah. He wasn't able to come here today, but he's got no objection to it at all. And he would wish that, you know, she could get the permission to do what she requires to do to the house. You know, I enjoy the area, the fishing and the lake. I can't see it would cause any problem. You know, it's not going to put any drainage into the lake that would affect the, you know, the fishing and
Thank you.
the quality.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So I'm in fully support of the application.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add? Okay.
Good evening.
State your name for the record, please. Keep that microphone really close.
My name is Luther Sam. I'm from the Tribal Historic Preservation up to the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. I'm here in full support of Hannah and what she's got going on. Our interest in the site was Hannah was kind enough to reach out to the tribe, more specifically because of the rich and historic area of the Mississippi, the Little Elk, and green prairie fish. So she was kind enough to reach out to our office to do what's kind of a phase one, which is kind of go over to the area, the property, have a look and see if it's going to impact any occupation or burial mound sites. So we took a look at it, and it seems really there's going to be no impact on. And she didn't have to do it, which is another thing that I really appreciated. It doesn't fall under Section 106, but she was able to. We're also friends. She was able to contact our office and do that. So our only really huge findings is the natural flow of the water. Right across the road is a wetland. And I don't know if it's the neighbor, if it's the drainage ditch down the road that is causing some of the backup. We also look at things like animal life and plant life. There is some documented historic plant in the area, and I don't have that list with me, but none of that is going to be impacted. Wildlife isn't going to be impacted as well. So I don't know if that counts for anything or if it does, but again, I really appreciate Hannah for reaching out to us. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything to add? Yes, sir.
Mike Schuett, Chairman for Green Prairie Township, along with Dan Maslowski and Wayne Stoner, talking with them and hearing Hannah's situation. We are totally fine with the plan that she proposes, thinking that the whole moving the home back 10 feet to meet the conformance of the setbacks, that's a lot of extra work to do that. And that home is already there. So my own personal feeling, I'm in favor with just moving forward with it as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, while you're up there, can I ask you a question? There's a lot of talk about guiding that stormwater back to that natural drainage. Are there plans by the township to open up that drainage way so it doesn't just back up? Because if the water is going to be directed there, will it be opened up to be able to move away?
You know, that's something that has never been brought up to us, but we certainly can look into that.
Okay, that was a call you
I
were
see no
making
reason why we
tomorrow?
wouldn't.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I was speaking to Bob Masog today about, I don't know who to contact in this county for anything, so.
I'm sorry, I thought he had given you contact information.
The phone number wasn't good,
Okay.
so.
Okay, thanks. Any other input? Any other input at this time? One more call? Any for or against this application? If not, we'll close the public input portion of this meeting. Okay, questions before we go to the criteria questions? Okay. Okay, the criteria questions. Number one, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? We're going to start out with Clint.
Okay, I'll get there. Might take me a little bit. Okay, we know that the house is non-conforming because it's too close to the lake. But when you look at it, what I appreciate is after the house, there is absolutely zero development in the shore impact zone other than that house. That's been there for a while. Totally think she's being totally honest. She's done a lot of extra research on this. I give her a high five on that. I think when we look at, she's, already looked at that type 3 septic system, was moved back, it's above the water, that's great. She's got that stormwater plan. I think that's great. Everything she's talked about tonight has been pushing that water away from the lake. And with her proposal of moving or adding on, I know we don't always like to add on to non-conforming structures, but everything she's looking at adding on is out of the shore impact zone. I know it's still tied to the house, but at least it's out of the shore impact zone. I think with, I don't know why we even have to do variance for putting blocks and raising that house. It's no different than Fish Trap and Chaminade and all that flooding that's going on. I think it's just great because it'll help. But anyways, when we put in the stormwater plan, some of the things she has implemented, her plan, I think it does bring it into harmony with our land use ordinances and comprehensive plan. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Anybody else like to add to that?
All I'll state is, I agree totally with Clint had to say, because I was thinking along the same page there.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, I would agree, and I appreciate the points that Clint made. I agree with all he said.
Nothing further.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to be the bad guy here and point out a few things that concern me. I mean, if we didn't allow the lift, you wouldn't need 750 yards of fill within the shore impact zone. 750 yards of fill within the shore impact zone. Once it's lifted, then you need the fill. The closer you get to the lake, the more concerning it is for controlling runoff. I understand you'll try to contour that so it goes away from the lake. We were standing in water. Your whole property was at the ordinary high water mark. I don't see directing water very easily without doing a lot of manipulating of that shore impact zone, that first 40, 50 feet or 40 feet, basically, under your proposal. Um, it's two parcels, 142 feet of shoreline, but great. I mean, 120 is a minimum for a conforming property, 30,000 square feet is minimum for a conforming property. You've got over 50,000 square feet. Nice size property. Plenty of room to do the proposals you're doing farther from the lake. And probably, if you were to look at the future, possibly, probably, in my opinion, a better spot for it. The stormwater plan is, it needs more work than that. I mean, it's a nice compilation of your thoughts, but any stormwater plan that we would condition would be but through Land Services and Soil and Water Conservation District, or a professional engineered plan, to be sure the water does go the way you intend it to go. Yeah, a real challenge to get that water away from the lake when you're only at 40 feet and you've got 750 yards of fill to contour in that short distance. So that's my thoughts on question number one.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mark.
You had made the comment 750 yards will be hauled into shore impact zone. I don't believe I read it's in 750 yards will be hauled in, but I don't believe all of that was going to be in the
Correct.
shore impact zone.
Yep, correct. A portion of it, a third of it, whatever. Yep. Good point. All
Mr.
right.
Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
one other comment I'll just make here. I'm kind of concerned about this adding on to the nonconformity. I think looking at this as two separate issues, the raising of the house in its current location without the adding on to a nonconformity would be a complete separate different issue. I'm concerned with this meeting the general purposes of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan when we're attaching the additional structure and the additional garage to a nonconformity. Something needs to be done, obviously, with the current location of the home and where it sits. Raising that up maybe is a solution in and of itself for that. But adding on to it, I don't know that that meets the general purposes of the land use ordinance.
Yeah, and thank you. And another point, these are 5 variances you're asking for here. Adding on to a nonconformity, expanding an existing nonconformity within the shore impact zone, within the setback to the lake. Especially when you have a large building envelope on a nice-sized lot. Okay, anything more on number 1? Question number 2 then, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? We're going to start with you, Dave Brucher, first.
I've listened to all of you on the previous question. And, and we had the input from the public here about moving the house. It does not seem that the way it's planned, that with the option to move the house back, because we've inspected properties up at Lake Chaminade, I believe, where they had lifted the houses and then moved them back. Once you've got the house lifted, it doesn't take too much to move it then. And you're planning on getting those beams underneath it to lift it. And so I would have to say, based on what I've seen in previous situations, that you're going to go through and lift that house. It isn't going to take that much more to move it back and make it compliant. And I don't like giving that answer. I mean, it's not easy. So I have to say no.
Yeah, thank you. Another observation on that, oftentimes when they do that, they lift it up and move it back, and then put on the foundation, then move it back again right into the shore impact zone. Doesn't ever seem to make sense to me when that happens. Okay, number 2.
Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't use that answer if there weren't any other options, you know, and I just see that there are options there, so.
Okay. Is that your input on question number 2, Dave?
Pardon me, ma'am?
That's your input on question number 2?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add to question number 2?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Clint.
Can I ask a question yet? Where did the 750 yards of fill come from?
It was a recommendation from Bob Mason.
Because, you know, that's 75 dump trucks.
It could be less.
I can't see it being that much, but that's here, whatever. I totally think that raising the house up and getting that done is reasonable for this property. You know, we don't want stuff in the shore impact zone, the house is already, and this particular property, man, you move that house back, now you got more that can go to the lake. I'm not saying closer lake's better, I'm not saying that. But where it is, there's a chance to get that water diverted. That is such a flat piece of property, 1 inch of slope will do tremendous amount of drainage in that place. So I just think they're way over. You know, I don't know if the intent's to fill that all in, the whole thing, you know, I'm not for that, but I'm for putting fill in, getting it turned to get the water out of there. I'm totally for that. And I think if that's what's being talked about, raising the cabin up, I think it should be higher, but I definitely think that it's reasonable that way.
Thank you. Marv?
Mr. Chair, something I want to point out too, 50 notices were sent. We heard 3 people in support of it, and also on top of it, the township supporting it. And here, I think, obviously, we're quite supportive and see that it needs to come out of the water. How to accomplish that, I'm not the person to give the answer, and hopefully we come up with something that we could resolve this. And Brent brought up some good points of adding on to a nonconformity. And, you know, as we look at Shamana and Fish Trap, what has happened over there, and being an issue, and them being allowed that, but that's a whole different issue. But I mean, you're kind of stuck in the same thing with the water issues going on. And what can we do to prevent this being an issue going forward, or you do? So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, go ahead, Brent.
just one other thing. Along those same lines, I do agree that the home that's existing there does need to be lifted. That's apparently obvious from the visit. It's the adding on to that and the adding on to a nonconformity that I struggle with regarding the land use ordinances of the county.
Okay, thanks. I guess I don't have anything to add to that, and other than, is it reasonable to do all of that 40 feet away from the lake shore? Again, I agree, the house has to be lifted, it has to be improved. 40 feet from the lake shore, not reasonable. Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? We'll start with Marvin.
As we heard from the neighbors, saying they support this fully, and if you look down that line, it fits in there very well. It will not be over the 25-foot mark, as she had the option of raising it that high and would be beyond that, so it would stand out more so than this. So as far as it goes, I believe if this, we'll do the drive-by deal. Will you notice on a lake? Yeah. Is it going to stand out like a sore thumb? No. Roadside, I think it's a conforming lot. It's just that the initial building was put in the lake, or the setback area there, like that creates a nonconformity. But will it fit in there as a locality? Yeah, it would fit in there quite well.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add?
Other than they're all flooded in there, so is it really gonna maintain essential character if we lift it up? They're all flooded in there.
Yeah, I think we'd, by approving this, we'd have our stamp of approval on something elevated 40 feet from the shoreline with a fair amount of fill on the shore side. And I think it'll stand out as something that defies ordinance, defies what we stand for, protection of natural resources, protection of surface water. You know, it's everybody's lake, it's everybody's water. It's our task, one of our tasks, to preserve that. The drive-by is important to people. I can't see this as, difficult to answer that question as maintaining essential character. It will stick out like a sore thumb. Anybody else want to add to essential character? Okay, if not, we'll go on to question number 4. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Starting out with you, Brent?
I think certainly the alleged practical difficulty here is unique to this property. The ordinary high water mark, the shape of that lot, how it was designed, the location of the current septic system adds to that as well. I think we heard maybe that that's in that general area where the tanks are. The Tier 3 is moved out of that area behind the shed. But certainly there are some circumstances that are unique to this property, including all of the aforementioned.
Okay. Anyone like to add to that?
I have nothing to add.
Go ahead, Dave.
I have nothing to add. I think Brent covered it very well.
Yeah, again, this is a unique opportunity to lift and move back. A building envelope exists. Most of the time, we don't have a building envelope that's that convenient, that's that, I'd say, affordable. Not going to cost much more. You're going to have to move it anyway and move it back. Can't see it. There is really no practical difficulty when a large building envelope like that exists. And when you're pushing the envelope with 5 variance requests. That's all I have to add to that. Practical difficulty, anybody else? Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Oh, I'm supposed to start first on this one. Well, it's your request. You've laid out a design before us, and this is what you're asking for. It is your actions that are necessitating a variance to fulfill your request. A more reasonable request, I might be in favor of. I don't believe this is a reasonable request. There is no practical difficulty, and it's initiated by you. Anybody else like to add to question number 5?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Clint.
I believe in the portion of raising the house and getting that out of the water. I think the need for this variance is created by other actions other than the landowner and previous landowners, just from the rising water and just the changing of the topograph I think that's where the need is to, get that house raised up.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Glenn.
also, I believe when this original cabin probably was built, I'm guessing Green Prairie Township probably was the one that set and had established the setbacks, and it probably didn't have that 50-foot or any setbacks. So that created part of this practical difficulty. Amy, are you looking into that now?
I'm just looking at when it was built.
76.
In 1976, there was shoreland standards, and so even if the township was permitting, they would have needed to meet those minimum standards. However, back then, there was also the caveat that you could be 50 feet from the lake. So when we have homes that were built right at the beginning of setback standards, it's really hard to know. We don't have any permitting history on it, so it's really hard to know what the rationale was for permitting the structure where it was. Also, measurement might, the difference in measurement might have played in depending on where that water level was at the point, where if they weren't taking it from the actual established elevation, that certainly could explain why the home is 10 feet closer than what it would have minimally been allowed at the time.
Thank you very much.
Any other inputs? Yeah, I have a tendency to agree with the high water being a practical difficulty, definitely. But the high water didn't force the necessity for a large addition onto this house. An addition, expanding a nonconformity. Okay, now, ready for number 6? Okay. Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Clint?
Definitely, she don't want to live like a mermaid. She wants to get out of the water and get a house, So I definitely think it's more than just economics.
Anybody else?
That was brought up is, what are we looking at? How many variances, Dave, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, 5, yeah.
That the practical difficulty about, it does involve more than just economic. It doesn't. I mean, is that with money, economically, she could be in compliance by moving the house back there. And then the only other thing then would be the height, if she went over the height. So that's my thoughts on this.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I believe it's more than economics, and the reason why I'll say that is here, when she went ahead and submitted this stormwater shed management plan on her own, looking into things like that, sound like, and she made additional phone calls trying to determine what would be best for the neighborhood. So she looked in more than that, and we talked about, another thing I want to ask is, we talked about 5 variances, and here, if we're going to look at all of them as a whole before we vote, because I think we looked at this possible of the house needing to be raised and the huge addition. I think we all question that one too. So I'm just thinking about that right now.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add, number 6? All right, so are you ready to vote?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Clint.
I'd like to ask what the 5 variances are again.
So, Mr. Chair, there's several sections of the ordinance that she's varying from, but the projects that result in a variance ask would be to elevate the structure, put the 700 square foot addition onto the home, and the garage. So it's 3 variances variance requests. And the sections of the ordinance, though, let me get to that. Oops, here we go.
Yeah, a couple of them are repetitive a
Is,
bit.
yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
I would say 706.3 is duplicative of the section 300, though.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'd recommend that we split this into 2 votes. Do the,
She has one request. Correct?
Mr. Chair, like any other where there's distinct requests that could be separated, you do have the discretion of granting part of it and not part of it, or considering parts of the whole in your voting. So you certainly have that ability.
Okay, go ahead. Clint?
I just recommend that we do a vote on the raising of the house and then a separate vote on 2 additions, which would be the other 2 variance requests,
2 additions?
the garage and the addition on the house.
That's one
Well,
structure,
it's
isn't it?
listed separate twice on there.
So, Mr. Chair, it sounds like you're looking at the request to elevate the home separately from the additions. So you could consider the garage and living addition in one vote, and then raising the home in another vote if that's what you choose. You can lump those in whichever way you'd like.
Okay. Okay, that's your proposal. Does anybody else would like to attack it that way? Personally, I don't, but suppose we should ask the candidate, applicant, what your feelings are on that. Would you do one without the other?
I came to you with the request for a variance to come up with a plan.
Okay,
What do I do?
yeah. And that's how I look at it too. She's got a plan before us, yes or no? So
It's my
splitting it
home.
up into two things does not seem reasonable. That's not her proposal.
If I can live there for 10 years longer, sure. It's my home. You all saw it. It's underwater. I have a family. I'm a single mother. I'm trying to make do. Can I move it back 10 feet? Financially, I know you guys don't care about that, but I do. I don't know. Economic hardship? Absolutely. Everybody's going through that right now. I got this house in 2018. I moved here 2019. Did I choose to live here? Not exactly. This is what I got stuck with. So I'm here, decided to make a career in Little Falls at the local senior living center, taking care of 65 elders in the community. I've worked long and hard to bring this plan to you, and to hear it criticized and pulled apart in ordinances, it's a variance. I understand it's not conforming. I understand it's 10 feet. We're talking 10 feet. 46.15 is the little bump out. 50 feet is my bedroom from the lake. We're talking about moving my whole house and thousands of dollars extra for 10 feet. I don't know. Like I said, the ordinance was made before or after the house was there. I'm trying to make the best of it. So if you have to make 2 decisions so I can make an improvement, live there and enjoy my life and not have to worry about wondering if my possessions are gonna float away down the drainage ditch or not be able to access my pipes because they froze out in the winter because I had to crawl 18 inches under the crawl space, or wonder if my toilet can flush. It's the reality. So I'm coming to you today to ask you to help me. So what can I do with this property that's not gonna cost me $1 million today? Sorry. It's the reality of my life.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And to be a conforming property, you have to move back 35 feet, not 10 feet, so, but just to clarify that point.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent, what's your proposal?
I think Clint had talked about separating this out. I wouldn't be opposed as we go through the vote to look at the existing non-conforming structure separately from the proposed additions, and vote in that order, taking it step one, or one would be house, two would be proposed additions, which I think are two.
Two additions, the attached garage and the living space. For clarity, to know if you're voting yes or no, if you're looking at kind of wrapping, I would prefer that you do one vote for raising and one vote for the additions, if you want to do it that way. It's much more clear when you're voting on each individual question if you do it that way, or if you're going to lump it together, that's fine. But if you want to consider parts of the whole, then I suggest we do two, you go through two separate votes.
Okay, that would be more clear, that's for sure. Agreed? Which question would you like to hear first in your proposal? Clint?
First one listed, the raising of the house.
Okay, all right. Is that clear enough, Tammy?
Yes, so we're voting on elevation of the home,
Okay,
of the existing home, right?
yep,
Yes?
agreed? All right. Okay, is the request in harmony with the general purposes intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? We'll start out with Clint,
Yes.
Dave Brucher,
Yes.
Marv,
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Number two, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Starting with Dave,
Yes.
Marv,
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave Brucher?
Yes.
Number four, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Brent Lindgren?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave Brucher?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Number five, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Number six, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Okay, question number two. We need a motion on this one first?
Yep,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, you can make a motion on this one.
Okay, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we'd approve the raising of the home.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on it? No discussion, we'll proceed to vote. I'll take a roll call vote. All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. Clint?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Marvin?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
And myself is nay. Motion carries. Okay, next question on the agenda is the addition. Is that clear enough? Okay. We'll start out that vote. Obviously, we have enough discussion to support both of these. Okay. We'll start out with Clint again on this one. Is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
No.
And myself is no. Is the applicant, number two, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Dave?
No.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave Brucher?
No.
And Marvin?
Yes.
Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
Marvin?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Myself is no. Okay, 5 questions the affirmative, 1 to the negative. Is there a motion to deny this request? I move that we deny this request to add on to this non-conforming structure.
I think we should talk about, oh no, I guess we can't.
Go ahead, Clint.
Well, we got one that's no, number 2.
Yep.
So that was Dave, Brent, and you. Can we talk about what it would take to change that?
Sharon, can you tell me who voted what on question 5? Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. I did not catch who voted what on 5.
Okay, you didn't catch that?
Can you tell me?
I can, but
Like, can you go through it with me,
yeah.
please?
So we had,
Just go through Marvin.
Marvin, yes. Brent, yes. Stish, no. Clint, yes. Dave Brucher, no.
Okay. Is that correct? Is that how you vote? Okay.
That's how I remember it.
All right, I just didn't catch it, so I want to make sure I had it.
So, Mr. Chair, all I'm asking is we have one, question 2 that's in the negative, or not the majority. So that would be the failing for this request. I'm just asking if there's something that could be done, a condition or something that would change somebody's vote. I can ask that, right? Or no?
Sure, go ahead.
Or do we have to go through and,
No, right now you have, it would require a motion for denial. If you don't think that motion, typically what you do is you'd make the motion, take the vote. If that motion fails, then you go back
Okay.
and discuss
okay,
what could change.
okay,
change it
understood.
So the motion would pass.
Okay, hope we're confusing everybody. Okay, we'll proceed with, okay, there's a question on the floor. Has there been a second yet? I move that we deny this motion,
I would
or
second that.
deny this request.
I would second that.
Okay, a motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, if there's no discussion on the motion, we'll proceed with a vote. If you're in favor, say aye. If you're opposed, say no. Okay, a motion is to approve this addition onto the non-conforming
No,
structure.
it's to deny.
It's to deny.
Your motion
Oh,
was
the
to
motion was to
deny.
deny, right. Motion was to deny the addition of this, this addition onto the non-conforming structure. Okay, we'll proceed with the vote. Marvin?
Nay.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Nay.
And Dave Brucher?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails. Carries. The motion to deny carries, sorry.
Okay, so the variance to raise the home has been granted. To add the additions has been denied. So,
Okay, if you have any questions, you can call Land Services.
Sign them too. Both of them. Maria wasn't looking around. Well, I didn't want to spill otherwise. I'm not gonna get all goofy and then it
I look at some of the
would
other.
all get wet.
Okay, next item on the agenda is, Amber Parker Trust, John Parker. Applicant would please come forward. State your name for the record, please.
Good evening.
Evening.
I am John Parker.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys again.
Okay, this address is 2727 Charles Drive, Motley. Application for variance to rebuild and add on to a deck within a bluff on Crookneck Lake,
Yes,
Scandia
sir.
Township. Okay, Amy, thank you. The staff report, please.
Mr. Chair, this is a variance again to construct a deck within the bluff located in section 17 of Scandia Valley Township. The ordinance reference is 706.1B and E. Here's a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then here's a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And then some photos provided by the applicant. Here's an aerial photograph of the parcels outlined in blue and yellow. And then some oblique imagery of the parcel, and then also a shoreline photo. Here's some photos taken at the site visit on the 27th of June.
Profound.
Yes.
What's so funny?
That picture.
What's funny about it? Oh, yeah.
It's the virtual tour guide.
yeah, he was, he did a fine
Oh,
job.
yeah, there's a picture of two of us, Marv and me.
So this property is on Crookneck Lake, which is a general development lake. It is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 50 feet wide and 18,640 square feet. According to the assessor's records, the 480 square foot two-level dwelling was built in 1969. The dwelling, including the lakeside deck, is approximately 59 feet from the lake and within the bluff. Mr. Chair, here is the bluff determination. And then also a picture, and highlighted in yellow is the building envelope. The applicant purchased the property in 2010. At the time of purchase, the dwelling had decking on 3 sides. The applicant removed the 30 by 8 deck on the east side of the dwelling shortly after purchase. If the deck had been replaced within 1 year of removal, the deck could have been replaced with a permit. And then here is the assessor's drawing. At the time, the 3 decks were on with the dimensions. The applicant is requesting to build a 32 by 12 deck on the east side of the dwelling. The deck would be approximately 59 feet from the lake and within the bluff. The applicant has stated in their application that posts for the deck would be hand dug. The impervious surface, including the deck addition, is 16.4%. 25% impervious surface is allowed. And then here's that calculation. And then the applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreline development, goal D1. And then the comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 250 notices were sent. No correspondence was received prior to the public hearing. Then here are finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Applicant, have anything to add?
What's that?
Do you have anything to add?
I do not. That was well covered.
Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, questions? Oh,
Mr.
one
Chair?
correction before we go. That's a 100-foot wide property, Amy, and the, yep, and also, just for the record too, yesterday, Clint, myself, Dave, and Amy were there for a viewing along with Marv on the phone, which was documented real well in the picture. And he was on FaceTime. And then Brent,
I visited with John a little later in the evening,
okay,
as time
All right.
permitted.
so, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, also, don't forget, he also came up.
Okay. So, nothing to add at this point?
No, sir.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Amy, can you back up to the assessor's sketch or drawing. Am I reading that right? 6 feet on the side deck,
So that would
or?
have been the front, like the front door.
Yeah, so this is the deck they're replacing. And it was 8 by 30.
Look in the bottom.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I got to see the directional north there. Okay, that cleared it up for me, thanks.
That's kind of a weird drawing.
Mr. Chair?
It's not, yeah, their drawings aren't oriented north, so in order to match it up with everything else you were seeing, I did that, so.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Clint.
Maybe just for Amy. So being their time lapse from when they tore that down, no matter what size deck they put on, they have to get a variance, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The replacement right is valid for a year. So within 1 year of removing a nonconformity, you have the right to replace it. Since over a year had lapsed, then that right is lost.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I have a question for the applicant. 2010, you purchased and you began remodeling.
Yes, sir.
You replaced ceiling joists. Looks like ceiling joists, are they rafters or
They,
are they the same, one and the same in yours?
yeah, that particular unique building uses an interesting plywood gusset plate and rafter thing to get that vault in that ceiling. So, yeah, when we started the remodel, we took down the ceiling and then realized that ants had chewed through a bunch of the structure on the ceiling. So, we replaced a couple of them, but then tied them together a little lower.
Okay. So you did all interior remodeling?
Yep.
No permit was required for that, I assume?
No, well, I mean, we got the appropriate, we didn't move any plumbing, but we did all the electrical, so obviously that was a state electrical permit that we pulled for that.
Oh, sure.
Yep, but nothing else.
But nothing through land services was required?
Right, yeah, nothing else structural inside the cabin.
Yeah.
That required a permit.
So you didn't have access to the information about the deck at the time, I'm guessing?
No.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at, in a roundabout way. Thank you. Anybody else?
Questions?
Go ahead, Marv.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions here. First of all, you have had the right to replace what you had.
Yep.
And one thing too, if they haven't pointed it out, the bluff zone is a very sensitive area. And usually, we do not allow anything to happen in a bluff. It is very seldom this happens. So why are you proposing a larger deck when there's a possibility we may possibly allow original size? That's just that possibility. So why are you asking for so much larger of a deck than what you originally had?
So the main reason is that when you look at the profile of the cabin, it doesn't, what do you call it, the awning? No, the eave?
The eave?
The eave. It doesn't have an eave that you can stand under, it comes out. So once you put the gutter back on the side of that, it really sucks up 2 feet of usable space, which caused that 8-foot deck on there to be like a 6-foot deck of usable when you're physically on it. So it's more just like a hallway.
Yeah.
And so our desire is to make it actually a bit usable instead of a single file line of chairs out there.
Okay.
And you guys kind of felt that when you were standing there. You could kind of sense how the house coming at you really used up a lot of space.
Next question, have you had a storm water management plan, or have you had anyone from come out and look at that as water diversion or construction or in being in this bluff zone?
No, I've never, I don't know where I get a water management plan from. When we talked at the DRT meeting, we talked about just how when digging the footings would we control any water runoff if there was a storm. My answer was like, we'll just dig it and pour it in the same day, and then take the excess material off the property. As a lake association, we talk a lot about like rain gardens and buffering water, and so you can see different spots on my property where try to do some buffering. I don't know if they're in this photo. Just to the left of that last picture was a spot where, I really worked on like, hey, how can we like buffer that water into a little rain garden that's coming off the driveway, for instance. Again, on the other side of the house have done the same thing. So, so no official people have come and advised me about how to deal with that runoff, but certainly it's something we talk about at our lake association meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Dave.
Marv, we were out there and it was beautifully done, really beautifully done. Just the lot of the walkways were just mulch, and with the combination of what they did, it's hard to see in the pictures, but I don't think I've viewed one of these with more effort put into protecting it. I mean, and I don't know if hostas count, but it looked pretty good. I mean, it really did a nice job.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions? All right, ready for public input?
I had one
Go ahead, Brent.
further question, just for some clarity in my mind. I understand working on a project, you start it, it gets set on the back burner because something else is more pressing or things happen. This started in 2010 when the deck is taken off. But I'm losing my train of thought there. If this was taken off in 2010, you're coming in now in 2022 to put this back on. You obviously knew that you had to acquire a permit to put the deck on. Is that right? Or
Yeah, well,
how did that come
so
about?
I just took it off because of course, because like I told you guys earlier, it was, falling apart and improperly attached to the house. So I just didn't want my kids on the deck. Possibly in hindsight, I should have somehow left it there, but I really did not like it at all, like in that safety condition with my 3 kids. So these projects take a long time, and about now is when I'm getting around to figuring out how to put it back on. I did know you needed rebuild permits, but I didn't realize there was a timeline, like an expiration on that, until I called and filed for my rebuild permit, and they said, well, when did you take that off? I was like, a little while ago, 10 years, a decade ago, I guess. So time flies when you have 3 kids and are restoring a cabin, I guess.
Okay, I have a question. What would you put underneath that deck? Would you store things there? The deck is considered impervious surface.
My intent was just leave it as it is with those chips underneath.
Chips on it, and there's no plastic underneath the chips.
There's nothing underneath the chips. Yeah.
I would recommend that, since a deck is considered impervious surface, I suppose if we granted it without a variant or a condition, you could put concrete underneath there. You've already got the impervious surface. So I would suggest that we would condition it that would not ever happen, that it would remain impervious surface beneath that deck, other than the small landing that you've got right now in front of the door. Then the other question for Amy was, if we did not grant this, I assume they have the ability to have a 32 square foot landing at that top
Yes, Mr. Chair, 32 square foot landing with steps.
with steps down. So if we deny, that is permittable over the counter,
You're
Mr. Chair,
saying a landing off this side
off
Yeah.
your top story.
and then dent that down. Okay.
Mr.
There's a way
Chair.
to get down. Okay.
Okay,
okay, Mr. Chair.
go ahead, Clint.
Okay, so I understand the landing for that top, but then how about over on that screened-in porch access to that door? There's a door on that screened-in.
I think that's what he was referring to.
There
It's
isn't
right
a
here.
door on this side?
There
There's
is,
a
yeah.
door right here.
No, but over here.
That's what we were referring to.
Oh, that runs around the front. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, thought
Instead of
that-
the deck, they could
Yep.
have
I
a,
thought there was a door on the
32 square foot
side,
landing.
but there isn't, it's around the front.
yep.
Yep.
All right, yeah, that, just to clarify the rules.
Okay.
Public input? I don't think there's gonna be a lot. Okay, open for public input. Anybody have anything to say for or against this request? Last 3 times. Anybody have anything to say for or against this request? Last time. Anybody in the public have anything to say about this request? If not, we'll close the public input portion of this meeting. Okay, are we ready for the questions? Okay. Okay, we're going to start with you, Dave, on the first question. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, it is, and just makes that cabin more livable, and without compromising, I think we can approve this without compromising the integrity of the bluff, especially if you add the condition that we talked about. So I have to say yes.
Okay, anybody like to add to that? You know, I guess I'd like to add, if this were a new build, you know, it would be a little different story. But the excavation's done, the deck was there, the spot for the deck is there. It has had no impact on that bluff that is noticeable from our observations. There is no erosion on the bluff. There are some other nonconformities on your property that would be fun to address, but, you know, that's not why we're here today. So I would say yes, it is in harmony with the comprehensive plan and ordinance, even though it's, you know, your ability to reconstruct that has expired. But I would add only at the original size. I would, you know, I don't think it's reasonable to request a larger size than you originally had, even though you had a fairly unique little difficulty there. Okay, that's all I had to add to that. Okay, number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Marv?
Well, you know, I'm glad you brought up the fact that going back to the original size, because here we view the bluff as such a sensitive area. But since it was there, and it sounds like you've been a real steward of the property, I agree that you're doing this in a reasonable manner and doing it as the original size. And I feel that with it being an original size, it would be doing it in a reasonable manner. And to point out also, 250 notices were sent and never heard any objections to that.
Okay, anybody else like to add to that?
Which one are we on, 2?
Is he,
Okay. I think it is reasonable. There was a deck there, you know, it's back in time. If you look at that, yes, it's in a bluff. We totally can agree. But that piece is cut out. It was already there, like Dave stated earlier. You know, the deck adds impervious surface. I know that, to me, that's like a technicality, because a deck, the water's gonna run through if the deck ain't there or not. The same amount of water is gonna hit the ground right there. So when I look at the reasonable, I look at the extra 4 feet, I think is a reasonable ask. I mean, he always had an 8-foot deck. Yes, he missed the deadline because of whatever. Yeah, it's 10, 12 years later. You know, it's a long time. I understand that. But, so I just think it's reasonable. Now, in a different situation, no. But you look at, we see no erosion anywhere. it's all very well grassed, especially for being in the trees like that. That's what kind of I thought was pretty unique, that it was really grassed good, and that's just a flat spot. If a deck's there or not, I believe the same amount of water is going to sit in that flat spot. So that's why I just say the extra 4 feet from what the original deck was. I think it's reasonable. I don't know. That's just kind of my thinking on it.
The only thing I'd add to that is that I think I can vote reasonable with the two conditions, that impervious surface remain underneath the decks and it be at the original size. Because more than just water going through that deck gets down into that area under the deck. I mean, there's a hillside there, there's quite a bit of an area right around it, there's the roof line even. Yeah, of course, that will have gutters on it, but still, that water has to go somewhere too. The more impervious surface you have, and water will get underneath that deck, even though it's impervious up above. So with that, I could vote yes, with those two conditions. Anybody else on number 2? Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Brent?
I think this is maybe especially unique to shoreland and lake homeowners. Decks are always on cabins, and sometimes they are built with wraparound decks. This one was with a wraparound deck. I understand in talking with the applicant last night that it was improperly attached to the house, is what I was told, and unsafe, and that's why it was removed. I also understand sometimes it takes a while to get back to a project and other things happen in the world, but this will maintain the essential character in the locality. It's hard to see that property from the road and also from the lake. I think you can see a photo where you can hardly see the deck up in there through the trees and the foliage. So I think it does maintain the essential character, being that lake homes do have decks, and this one is far enough back that the deck is hardly noticeable from wherever you might see it from.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add to that? I guess I'd just like to add, this structure, or the cabin is small. It's not a large imposing structure. An 8-foot deck added onto that isn't gonna, you won't see the deck even added onto that. And it blends in well. It's got a lot of natural landscaping and, it will look good. I agree with what Brent said. Okay, if nothing, number 4 is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property. Number 5, number 4, I mean, and that's my turn to go first. What did I write down here? Unique property, small, less than 19,000 square feet, 100 feet of shoreline though, that's good. And there realistically is no building envelope on that property, no realistic one, a little corner by the road.
The holding tank is right there.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess that's what's unique about this property, and, the residence is already there and compliant, non-conforming but compliant. And the unique circumstance of the deck being removed and just the request that it be put back. We'll say that was a 12-year practical difficulty. So I think there is a practical difficulty here. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I'm guessing when the property was purchased, he probably didn't know it was a bluff. And here, then, all the conditions that go when you're in a bluff create some problems afterwards.
I've learned a lot in the last 10 years.
Well, it sounds like you've done a great job of maintaining the character and doing your best being a steward of it.
Okay, on to number 5. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowner? Clint?
I believe so, just like it's been stated before, with basically no building envelope with, from the day the cabin was built or the day that the lot was made. Back then, we didn't even probably know what bluffs were and things like that, and them things change. Yes, some of the actions were from prior landowners because of how they built the cabin, but it's still by other actions other than just that.
Anything to add? Of course, I have to ask myself, who tore off that deck 12 years ago? I'll pass. I'll agree with Clint. Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? We're starting out with you, Dave.
Yes, it does, because of the unique property there. There are really no other options if they want, there's no economic, yeah, it does, yes, it does involve more than economic considerations. There are no other options.
Yeah, at the very least, a landing is needed there for that door, for safety reasons, for access reasons. We could argue that that's all you need is a landing, but we won't go there.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to point out also as when he originally looked at it, he could have left that deck in due time and then had it replaced. But with the children and all around, he brought up safety numerous times. And here, getting that out of there for the safety reason and being allowed to put it back, it is a safety issue also.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd agree with Marv said, as safety's a big thing, so that's more than just economics. Another thing to think about, you look at the height of that, and you put a landing out, let's say you didn't have that deck and you put a landing out there, he's not having a landing come off of this deck. That's just gonna go wrap around, he's gonna use the front, there is no stairs coming down. So if you put a landing there and bring stairways down, you add up the board feet, it's not much difference than this deck, if you look at it that way, so just wanted to bring that up.
Good point. All right, are we done with the questions? Are we ready to vote? Okay, we'll start out with Dave on the vote. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marvin?
Yes.
Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Dave?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Okay, all the questions were answered in the affirmative.
Okay,
Is there-
oh,
okay.
but we answered them questions.
With
according to them two
conditions in mind.
So you gotta explain them
Okay.
or make the motion.
I would move that we grant this variance request with the 2 conditions, the original size of the deck and only impervious surface underneath the deck. Is that what everybody had in mind when voting?
I would like to second that.
Okay. Okay, motion is made and seconded with 2 conditions. Any discussion?
Dave, Steve.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to vote. If you're in favor of the motion, say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Marvin?
Yay.
Brent?
Yes.
And Brent was?
Aye.
Myself was aye. Clint?
Aye.
And Dave.
In the positive manner.
Yes. All yeses, I guesses.
We gotta change
We need
it
a
up a
break.
little bit, be boring.
Oh, that's all right.
Thanks for smiling. Your request has been approved with 2 conditions.
Great.
Go forward and do well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Dave, I'm gonna take a 2-minute break.
What did this mean, Dave? Fund to address conditions? The variances? What was it?
Did I write that?
No, you said that. I had-
Oh,
I had to quote-
I'll get to that later. Yeah, I think it is time for, 3 minutes? Enough? 3-minute recess. Then we'll have you come forward if you want to make your way to the front or take a recess.